part of Paris where Nicolas Germain is covering that flame as it's laboriously trying to make its way around the French capital. Nick, tell us what you can see from where you are.
Well, right now I'm just a few meters away from the flame. Minutes ago it was the French judo champion David Douillet who had the flame. I'd say for the last half hour there have been fewer demonstrations as we left Paris and entered Issy-les-Moulineaux, and the crowd is a bit further away behind barricades. And so initially there were a lot of demonstrations in Paris near the Eiffel Tower. Every few meters, pro-Tibet demonstrators coming out, lying down in the street, and then violently removed by police. But now, the last, I'd say, half hour, it's been a bit calmer, and the crowds are further away, and it's harder for them for the pro-Tibet demonstrators to come onto the streets.
Now, Nick, earlier we saw some video pictures of incredibly violent clashes between the police forces and protesters. What can you tell us about that sort of violence and the police involvement on the ground?
Well, I saw that several times. You have one demonstrator alone who jumps out into the street. Immediately you have 4 policemen who jump onto the demonstrator and sometimes with violence put him aside. And I also saw some cameramen being hit by the police.
All right, thank you very much, Nicolas Germain, reporting there on the ground from Paris, where the Olympic flame is desperately trying to make its way around the French capital. I'll turn now to International Affairs Editor Robert Parsons. Hello, Robert, who's here with us today. Robert, what does this mean on the global scale? This is the second day in a row that the flame's progress has been hampered in such a violent way.
Well, it's becoming an increasing embarrassment for the Beijing authorities and also for the International Olympic Committee. We had the demonstrations in Greece just as it started off on its journey. As you say, in London yesterday, 37 arrests. Today in Paris, several arrests already, and things have still got a long way to go. And after this, it goes on to San Francisco. Who knows what will happen there? So it is becoming a global embarrassment for leaders around the world and focusing attention on what they're likely to do. And we've seen already that the French government has become rather indecisive about what it should do, contradictory remarks coming from different government ministers. There's no doubt that the longer this sort of thing goes on, the more the games are put under the spotlight, that the more pressure will be put on governments around the world to take action of one kind or another. Now, whether that means just criticising the Chinese government or whether it means taking decisive steps, as in the case of the Czech government, which decided it's not going to attend the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, remains to be seen. But certainly it's become an issue about which governments are seriously talking now, and that's not good for the Chinese authorities.
All right, well, what about China? Have they had any reaction so far to what has happened yesterday or today?
Well, the Chinese authorities at the moment are trying blithely to ignore the problem. They're talking about the harmonious journey of the torch, and it, of course, is scarcely harmonious at this stage, and it's only just started. And they're hoping, of course, that information about what's happening around the world doesn't filter back to the Chinese population. But given the role of the internet in communications in China, it seems scarcely possible, despite the best efforts of the Chinese authorities, that they'll be able to do that.
All right. Well, what about a potential boycott? We've mentioned that some world leaders are already stepping up to the plate. Could there be a boycott of, if not the entire Olympic Games, at least the opening ceremony?
I think it's very unlikely that there will be a boycott of the Olympic Games themselves, but it is beginning to look increasingly likely that governments will boycott the opening ceremony rather than be embarrassed by attending the ceremony itself and coming under domestic criticism. I think most of them will there is a chance that many will stay away, and already we have the Czech government deciding it will do that.
Well, all right, tell us a bit about the future of the Olympic flame, where it goes from here. It's set to go to San Francisco tomorrow. Is it likely that there'll be the similar sort of protest tomorrow?
I think it's more than likely that there will be similar protests in San Francisco tomorrow. Hard to predict, of course, but given what's happened in London and Paris, it seems extremely unlikely that something similar won't happen in San Francisco. And after that, it's on its way to Buenos Aires. The same thing could happen there. And the longer this goes on, the more embarrassing it becomes for the Chinese and for governments around the world who are being forced to take some kind of action.
All right, thank you very much, Robert Parsons, International Affairs Editor here at France 24. Thank you for watching. Stay with us. We'll be back in 20 minutes with more of that exclusive coverage of the Olympic flame making its way around the French capital.